First off, the overnight attack, it follows what it's been since November 18th that we've seen these strikes on commercial shipping by the Houthis. Why are they doing it?
Well, they're basically doing it because the main element of their ideological position in terms of foreign policy is to be anti-Israeli and secondarily anti-American. And they're doing it basically to demonstrate that they are actually acting on their beliefs, which is more than a lot of other nations and groups have been doing.
But this is coming at a time when they're in a kind of perhaps a peace process, a bit of a transition period after years of a brutal civil war where things were appearing to calm down. Is it in their interests to stoke tensions?
Well, I think what the strikes, or the American strikes, last night have basically put an end to what appeared to be a possible agreement between the Houthis and the Saudis to end the war in Yemen. But it's important to remember that, since basically the 6 months truce in 2022 and throughout 2023, there's been very little military activity in Yemen, particularly very little involving the Saudis or any other foreign troops. What little fighting has taken place has been between the different Yemeni factions. So one of the questions that arises is, to what extent the Houthis actually would have wanted to sign this agreement if it had happened. I think, the last 24 hours and the last week have really made this an event ending this situation more or less impossible.
So, but I think just on this point, the Saudis, their response so far is measured, Helen Lackner. They're voicing great concern, but not going beyond that.
Absolutely. I think, the Saudis, I think, had really hoped that they would achieve this deal. I still think it's not possible. But at the same time, the Saudis are in a very, like all the other Arabs, are in no position to make any statements against anyone who is taking action against Israel. I mean, however ambiguous their position might be, they cannot openly state that they are against action against Israel. And it's worth reminding, as your earlier correspondent pointed out, that, the Houthi actions are explicitly concerned with any Israeli-related shipping. The reduction in shipping through the Suez Canal, etc., has been considerable, but the targets of the Houthis are only those who have any official or any relationship to Israel, i.e. either going to Israel, own Israeli ownership, transit, any connection with Israel are their target. They've been very explicit that any ship that has no connection with Israel of any kind are most welcome to travel. So, given that situation and the popularity of the Houthi position throughout the Arab world, and obviously particularly in Yemen, it's very, very difficult for the Saudis to say anything stronger. But I still think that it's not going to be possible for them to make this agreement that they had hoped to make before the situation deteriorated sufficiently, and the situation has now clearly deteriorated.
And what about the reaction of Egypt? I mean, what is it? Something like 12% of global shipping goes through the Suez Canal. They get revenue from that canal. They're, for now, just expressing deep concern, but not formally taking one side or the other. Is that only a matter of time before they do?
Well, I think, the position of Egypt is particularly important because they are the ones who are actually suffering most from what's happening, in the sense that they're losing very considerable percentage of their revenue from the Suez Canal, and the revenue from the Suez Canal is one of their biggest revenues given the weakness of tourism in the last few years. So they are suffering more than others, but it is worth noting that they have not participated in Prosperity Guardian or indeed in any other action against the Houthis. They're in a similar position, which is, they cannot say publicly anything that is against anyone who is taking action against Israel in the current situation.
So tell us, Helen Lackner, how much of this is the Houthis acting of their own volition, and how much of this is doing the bidding of Iran?
I'd say it's the Houthis doing actions on their own volition entirely. Of course, the Iranians are their allies. The Iranians are providing them with certain, advanced technology and other activities, but this really fits into Houthi ideological belief. And the relationship, it's a mistake to suggest that the Houthis are Iranian proxies. The Houthis do what they want when they want to do it. When the Iranians ask them to do something that they don't want to do, they don't do it. So it's very much a situation where it is, their basic interests and objectives are similar. Therefore, they appear to be acting in concert. But at the same time, it's worth noting that the Houthis have actually been more active than the Iranians.
Directly speaking, what happens next?
Well, I'm afraid I don't know what happens next. I think the Houthis, as was pointed out and by Abdul Malik al-Houthi in his speeches, and I think by your correspondent, are going to respond in some form or shape. How strongly they respond clearly depends on to what extent their actual military capacity has been damaged by the strikes of the last night, which is something that I really am completely ignorant about. But I think the likelihood of the Houthis just, sitting down and doing nothing is zero. They will react, and they will do what they can. Up to now, their targets have not been U.S. and British ships in the Red Sea. Their targets have always been ships that were connected with Israel, and they were downed or by other British and American, and indeed in one case French ships, because the missiles or drones were within reach, But I think after this we can assume that they will directly target such shipping, whether these naval forces, whether they will actually manage to hit anyone, that's something entirely different.
So we could see a further spiral. Just one final question here. The irony is that Yemen was one of those rare Arab nations that in the past enjoyed fairly good relations with Israel.
I'm not sure which period of history you're talking about. I think officially Yemen, all Yemeni regimes have not been in favor of Israel, and there's been no question of recognizing Israel. In the last 2 or 3 years, after the Abraham Accords, some of the southern separatists, who are one of the factions of the anti-Houthi movement, have shown, said positive statements about Israel. But I don't think you'll find any Yemeni government or state organization that has officially been anything other than officially hostile to Israel.